Welcome to today's show. We're busting divorce myths today, and we've got Antonia from Mishcon de Reya. Antonia is a partner at Mishcon's, and they're a firm very, very famous for looking after Princess Diana in her divorce. So welcome again, and thank you for your time. So a stat caught my eye, and I just wanted to break it down with you and understand why, actually. So in 2022, we had the lowest amount of divorces since 1971.
Yeah.
Almost a 30% decrease from the year before. And I was like, that can't be right. I was thinking, is that because loads of people just fell out during COVID and then they'd already done the divorcing?
Yeah.
And some people believe it's because of this Divorce, Dissolution and Separation Act that came out in 2022. What does it mean, and could it be possibly the reason?
Yes, I think people heard or were told if you wait, you won't have to do a reason like adultery or 2 years separation for the divorce. It's just going to be your relationship's broken down. And I think people wanted to wait until they could divorce someone for that reason, not the old-fashioned way. So I think it was definitely that. I also think less people are getting married. So I think the stats have, reflect that in terms of the amount of divorces. But certainly in 2022, it was because people were wanting to use the portal and do the new route for divorce.
So this is that no-fault divorce?
Exactly, yeah.
Is that what you call it in your industry?
No-fault divorce, yeah. So the grounds just, you've got your relationship's irretrievably broken down, and then you, provide some information for your divorce petition, but there's no blame. There's no we've been separated, one of us has committed adultery, or I've been deserted, and there were sort of 5 reasons before. So it's meant to take the sting out of the early stages because no one's blaming the other party.
And then you have to wait.
Yes, and then you wait 20 weeks for this cooling off period before you can then go to the next stage of the divorce.
Okay, so I suppose people were... If you were going to divorce in January, you'd wait till the April for when it came in. And then even if you did get into the April, you weren't concluding it till the end of the year anyway.
Exactly. And I think the old way of doing it was possibly the same length of time. So you don't save any time. It's just you're able to do a joint application, which you couldn't do before, where you would both be the petitioner, or a sole application. But yes, it's the no blame thing I think people were waiting for.
Okay, so in preparation for today, I have to say I just put into Copilot top 5 UK divorce myths.
Okay.
So let's see if Copilot has helped us.
Okay.
So the first one, it says that UK individuals believe that divorce always means the end of family bonds.
I mean, I think that's the bleak version, isn't it? But that's not the reality.
You don't see it in your day-to-day.
No, and I think if you've got the right professionals, that's exactly what you want to avoid. I mean, my role as a family solicitor is to leave my client and their family in a better position than when they first come to you. So I would be really sad if that was the case. I think in reality, there's, of course, the odd family relationship breaks down. Possibly it was going to anyway, because this is a conflict, isn't it?
Yeah.
But generally, if it's done correctly and you've got the right sort of support, whether that's therapeutic support, etc., it shouldn't be the end. And
is it also about you negotiating an outcome of things that they may not have even been thinking about, like the child arrangements that could cause rows?
Exactly. And actually, children are really resilient. And if they're looked after and loved by both parents, then if they're supported, it should be the beginning of a new chapter as opposed to like the end of a bond. But if you watch things like The Split, I think they're always going to create the kind of the worst case scenarios for people.
Well, it makes better TV.
Of course, yeah.
The second one is that divorce is always lengthy. Now, I have a client who, for the best part of 7 years, was divorcing her husband.
Yeah.
They were living separately or together. It was always changing. It was about to come to the end, and then they got back together. Does it have to be a 7-year?
No.
Years?
It doesnly, no. I mean, it has to be, in order to be divorced, about 6 or 7 months to be formally divorced. And if you go to the fully contentious divorce financial proceedings, where you go to a final hearing and you don't settle at all during that process, and very few cases do that, about 95% of cases settle before a final hearing, then it could be 18 months to 2 years. But generally it should be under a year. Okay. And far less than that if you can negotiate an agreement with each other and use, the non-court dispute resolution options like mediation and collaborative law, etc. But yeah, I think worst case scenario, there's the odd case where people go on and on and on, and perhaps that might be very, very extreme circumstances.
And what are the little things that I can do as an individual to make it shorter, like being organised?
Yes, being organised. And I always say knowledge is power. So ask lots of questions, speak to lots of different people, and plan and work out what you want. And so that when you're negotiating or when you're asking for something, you know why you want it or need it. So it's things like pensions, taking pension advice. It's things like, what do I need? What do I spend every month? So what do I need to meet that? Do I need to get a job? Do I need to think about getting a mortgage? Where do I want to live? And if you can do things like that, as you say, be organised and have that information, it will make everything a lot easier.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3 is you need to have a reason to get divorced. So we've covered that a bit.
Yes, yeah. I mean, look, I think there's always going to be people who don't want to get divorced. One party is not necessarily going to want to be in the process, but unfortunately, fortunately, you don't have to be married to someone if you don't want to be now in 2025. The process is always going to go along without you, even if you don't want to get divorced.
And what happens if me and my husband were to get divorced? This is probably he'd be really laid back and he'd be nice about it, and I'd probably be the mean one. What would happen then? Like if I said, right, I want there to be a fault, and he's like, no, we're going to use the new rules. What happens then?
So you have to now use the new rules. So you go onto the portal.
So there are no old rules.
He could be a bit difficult and delay and not log on and, acknowledge service. But there's always a process by which you can say to the court, as the applicant, I've served it on him. I know he's received it. Please, can we carry on? And it might slow things down by a few weeks, maybe a few months, but it's going to continue.
Okay.
So there's very little you can do. You can ask someone not to apply for the final divorce order until you've got all the finances sorted. And the reason why people do that is because, again, a little bit depressing, but if someone dies during the divorce process, you're more protected as a widow than you are, a divorcee, because pension rights and insurance policies. So generally you tend not to get divorced until you've got the finances sorted. Mm-hmm. And there's ways to stop someone if they did try to do that. But otherwise the process does just move on.
Number 4, divorce will ruin your financial future.
I think it feels like that for some, doesn't it? If you're the financially stronger party, I often get people saying, I feel like I'm on the back foot, or I don't feel like I'm in control. Well, you're not going to be to some extent, because you're the one that's going to pay the other party. But when you're married, it is all joint during the marriage. And so I think it's changing the narrative and educating people in the early stages rather than in the end stages. So I think some people feel it does, but for many, if you get a lump sum, you're financially, you're freer, and you can actually make your own decisions. And particularly for the weaker financial party, you're going off on a different journey, and you'll need help and advice about how to invest that money. But I wouldn't say that myth's totally true. I think it depends which side you're on and how much money you've got to start with.
Well, if you think about it, let's say you've gone from funding 2 people. Yeah. And you emotionally feel like you've gone down by half. But actually, although it doesn't cost half to run one person's life, it's usually about 65%. So the gap that you have, if you're on track financially anyway, isn't halved. It's probably about a third extra is what you need to plan to work towards.
Yeah, I don't think it's as bad. And I think if managed correctly, it shouldn't necessarily feel like that. But at times it might do if you're the one who owns the majority of the assets.
Yeah. And taking a side step, but sticking on topic slightly, when I did a survey in 2024 asking people about their money, the thing that made me really sad was so many people said about sort of financial abuse and that they really needed help and tips on financial abuse. And I imagine in some divorces, that's the time when it's really going to happen. So if you're in that situation and let's say you're not married and there's financial abuse in a relationship, what can you do?
I think sometimes it's hard because you don't even know there's financial abuse until you come out of the relationship and you look back and all these things start coming out and you look, and you think, gosh, I can't believe that happened. But I think it's asking questions, being empowered to sort of say, why can't we do this? And where's this money going? And you're only going to be able to do that if you have the right professional support, whether it's someone like you who'd be going through with them and saying, what are your plans for the future, and helping them digest the information and speak up for themselves. But it's very difficult in a relationship if you're not married, because if you separate, your claims are basically not very much unless you've got children. So being married, you're much more protected. And I think, number one, it's about educating, because a lot of people don't even know that. And I think, again, if you do know that and understand that, then you can start to ask questions and sort of see where you want to be, whether you even want to be in that relationship.
Yeah, there's a lady that I helped last year, and she's not married. They're splitting up. Their children are 13, 14 years of age. And the partner, the ex-partner, he's paying for a house for her to have the children in until they're either out of education or 21. So when they're 21, which is only 7 odd years away, then she no longer has a home. And that just feels scary.
Yeah, again, a lot of people are in these relationships and they don't realise that they could end up in that situation. So thankfully she's got you, and so she can start planning. But yeah, that other person who's paying for that is not obliged to continue beyond that period. Lots of clients do say, look, I want to look after him or her beyond that. Is there anything I can do? Because if you've been in a long relationship, that's how people feel. But there are a lot of people who are left in the lurch and genuinely worry about how they're going to have a roof over their head.
And if you're being financially abused through the divorce process, I mean, I've seen it where I don't know the words, but is it like that you have to have a set amount up front given to the person who hasn't got any money?
Yes.
So that you've got time to live and money to spend.
Yeah,
what happens?
You'd have to apply for interim funding, so it's maintenance pending suit. Yes. And that gives you some element of independence, because then that money is yours to meet your needs. And you can also apply to have your legal fees paid for if you don't have access to funds. And so, there are options, but it's difficult. And a lot of people, when they're having to prove financial abuse, you list out the behaviour, it feels individually, people say, oh, but it doesn't, I don't think that's enough, or no, I feel really petty. But of course you have to remember the context, and also, one paper cut in a day is not very much, but if you have 100, it's agony. And so if you think that's why it's very important to have a solicitor to help you to set it all out really clearly. Because
and they probably have been minimised in your head by the other person.
Yeah, as I say, a lot of times, even though, when you break up with someone, friends start to say, oh, I always thought he or she was going to be difficult. Oh yeah, there was this time when I was really worried about you, but people haven't said anything. And it's a real journey for many, while they kind of sort of take it all in and realise that they have had a form of abuse. So
let's hopefully turn it now to a positive topic with a negative question. Does it always have to be contentious?
No, it doesn't. I think it's a mindset, and a lot of people say, oh, we want to do a deal and we want to be really amicable, and that's great. It's not always that easy, but I think if from the outset you think, we've been in a relationship, we did love and respect each other at some point, and so if we focus on that and try to not sweat the small stuff and argue over things that really are not going to make a difference to the outcome, it can be relatively painless and amicable. But I think it is difficult unless both of you are signed up to that, because one person can really believe that, but it takes the other party to work with them.
One thing that we do really well for people is if you're arguing over the little bits at the end, a financial advisor can really easily work out for you what's your minimum, what do you need to walk away with to live the life that you want. And sometimes maybe it's about giving up on that little bit of an argument because you've achieved what you need.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, and also bringing in the you early on, because then it avoids lots of discussions later on, because they already understand what they need. And I think if someone just wants to know they're going to be okay, and if they know that they're going to be okay, it makes the negotiations much easier.
Especially you're not negotiating out of fear, are you?
Exactly. And and again, it's knowledge, isn't it? It's understanding the process, understanding what you need, and then being satisfied with the agreement. I don't think anyone's going to be sort of skipping around at the end. I think the best outcome for everyone is to feel they've both compromised a bit and be relatively fine with it.
Yeah. Well, as always, thank you.
No
and
problem.
I'm sure everybody's found that so useful. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.